The new Pizza Planet event is here! Supercell finally fixed the bugs, and that means that contests are now available for everyone to play. In these contests, you compete with other players to get as high up on the leaderboard as possible for rewards like in the Angels vs Demon event, although the rewards are significantly worse, and it's also almost impossible now to share the top spot reward amongst multiple players, which is lame as hell. But these game modes are not, because we've got the return of Basketball and two new game modes, Special Delivery and the polarizing Brawl Hockey. If you've tried Brawl Hockey, you either love it or hate it, and in this video, I'm going to give a comprehensive guide on how to play all of these game modes so you can actually understand what the hell is going on and have some fun playing these game modes, because with Brawl Hockey in particular, the learning curve is pretty steep, but it's a lot of fun once you get the hang of it and learn its mechanics, so don't write it off just yet. Before we jump into the game mode talk though, let's first do a quick rundown of how these contests work. A contest is where you and, in this case, 45 other players compete against each other to get as high of a score as possible in your group, and you'll receive varying amounts of pizza slices depending on how high you place. Each contest lasts 3 days, and you get 5 tickets a day. It costs 1 ticket to play the game mode once, and the tickets stack, so you can just log in on the 3rd day of each contest to use all 15 tickets at the very end if you want to. Every few days there's a new contest. Each new contest will cycle through the different game modes. We got Basketball, Special Delivery, Brawl Hockey, with the added twist being that all of these game modes will be 2v2 and not 3v3s. Also, Brawl Ball, Gem Grab, and Knockout will be in the contest rotation as well as 2v2 modes, so if you don't like these new game modes, don't worry, you'll be able to play the more normal game modes eventually. The score calculation for the contest works like this. 5% of the damage dealt is converted to score points. Kills give 200 points, but in the score number, you'll see a number higher than that, which is just the 5% score points from the damage dealt to get that kill included into the points for that kill. The kill itself is worth 200 points though. And as of me making this video, I've only had the chance to play Basketball, which gives multiple goal points per goal, but in Basketball, you get 1,000 score points for scoring a 2-point goal, and 1,500 score points for scoring a 3-pointer, so my guess is that in other game modes, goals will generally each give only 500 points, and for game modes like Gem Grab, Knockout, and Special Delivery, it's anyone's guess, I have no idea. I'll leave a pinned comment on this video later when we get there. At the end of the game, both the points you and your teammate accumulated are added together as team points, so you're not competing against your teammate, you're working with them, and if you win the game, you'll also get a time score, which is supposed to offset the potential score point loss you'd have from finishing a game too early. Right, like if you score a few goals in Basketball and end the game in like 30 seconds, you lose out on 2 minutes of potential point farming from getting kills and dealing damage on the enemy team. So to compensate, Brawl Stars rewards you points for finishing the game early, which is the time score. The point formula for the time score seems to generally be something like you multiply the time remaining in the game in seconds by 25 points, and then add 1,425 points, so if you end the game with 36 seconds remaining, that's around 2,325 points you get for your time score. It might be off by like 25 points every now and then for whatever reason, maybe because of time rounding, I'm not really sure. And even if the game goes to 0 seconds, as long as you win, you'll get a time score bonus, but you won't get one if you lose, so keep that in mind as well. The only situation where you won't get a time score bonus if you win is if the game goes into overtime, because that will also eat into your time bonus as well, so very rarely you might not get a time score with a win if the game gets right up to the last few seconds in overtime, but that almost never happens, so you probably won't see this too often. And the main thing is, even with the time score bonus, you can actually farm a lot more score through damage and kills than what the time score itself is worth, especially in a game mode like Basketball where the maps are smaller, and most people are running tanks and tank counters, which pads a lot of extra numbers into those damage stats. So honestly, I wouldn't really worry too much about the time score at all, because you're usually better off if the game goes on for longer anyway, since you can farm more points through kills and damage. That being said though, if you do intentionally let the game go on for longer, keep in mind that while you can potentially farm a lot more points, you're also creating more opportunities to lose the game to the enemy team, and that's risky to do, because winning the game not only gives you a time bonus, but also gives you a 2.5x score multiplier, which is massive. It's the most important factor in getting a good score. You can run the overtime clock out and farm kills and damage all you want, but if you lose the game, you're probably not going to get as great of a score compared to if you just won the game outright and took the multiplier with the time score bonus. If you do outskill the enemy team by a lot, you can probably get away with farming a bunch of kills and damage to get a higher score, but the main way to get a high score in these contests is to win as many games as possible. So, how do you play these game modes to maximize your chances of winning? Let's jump into the game mode guides. First, starting off with Basketball, a returning game mode. If you've never played this before, it's pretty similar to Brawl Ball, but the goal is harder to score. The meta is also really similar to Brawl Ball, where mobility brawlers like tanks and assassins are the meta, and tank counters are really good too to counter those tanks and assassins. As mentioned before, goals are worth 2 points each, but if you score them outside the circle, it's a 3-point goal. First team to 5 points wins, so it can take 2 to 3 goals to win the game depending on if you get any 3-pointers. And also, this means that in Basketball, you can actually overscore the ball. If you get a 3-pointer after getting 2 2-pointers, that'll put you at 7 points, which is much higher than the 5 points needed to win, and it can net you an extra 5,000 points at the end of the game if you win this way, factoring in that multiplier, so it's not a bad idea to go for these if you're down to play a little risky. Scoring in Basketball is much more difficult than in Brawl Ball because the net is a lot smaller in Basketball, plus it's a lobbed arc instead of a straight shot, and on top of that the actual hoop itself is moving around, which means you'll need to play this game out a few times to get used to the feel of shooting the ball, and even then occasionally there are moments where you might go clown mode and fumble a bunch of goals in a row. It happens to the best of us. A few tips for scoring more consistently and easily. The best scoring location in Basketball is from the bottom or top of the goal, because at those locations the goal will stop moving for a bit as it changes direction, and this helps make lineups easier to get the ball into the net. And since the map is horizontal instead of vertical, usually the bottom is the easiest place to score just because if you're standing near the top it's a little harder to see the goal itself depending on your device. Also, while normally you'd need a super shot to score a 3-pointer, if you stand right at the bottom or top of the circle, because the hoop moves side to side, you can actually reach it from outside the circle with just a regular shot and score a 3-pointer without a super shot, which is yet another reason why the bottom is usually the best and most easiest place to score from. So in your games, you'll usually see the enemy team gunning for goals from the top of your goal, since the map is flipped for them, and your team will usually be trying to score from the bottom, but of course with good aim you can score from anywhere, and with a super you can score 3-pointers from everywhere. The bottom is just the easiest place to do it if you're new. Also, if you take a shot but miss the net and the ball bounces on the rim, it usually won't go in just because of how the goal itself moves and how random the bounces are, so don't rely on rim shots to make your goals, shoot for the net. Occasionally a rim shot might work out every now and then, but unfortunately it'll only be for the enemy team when they're losing and they take an accidental shot by misinput. So don't really think about these too much and just assume a rim shot is a missed shot. For a few awareness tips in Basketball, when someone goes for a goal, some beginners will make the mistake of turning their brains off just watching the ball fly through the air or bounce off the rim to see if it'll go in or not. Obviously don't do that. Keep playing just in case it doesn't go in so you can try and get the rebound, and also getting kills and damage here will help add to your score. Also, try not to group on your teammates when they're going for a goal. It's like basketball in real life, you'll want to potentially position yourself to look for the rebound in case your teammate misses, or play towards the middle of the map to defend if the enemy team takes possession of the ball. Another thing to note too is that for this contest specifically, it's going to be a 2v2 and not the usual 3v3, so the game is a lot less hectic in a way because there's one less enemy player on the field to worry about taking you out. So if the tank counter on the enemy team is busy or out of position and has no way to knock you back, or you get a double kill and are able to walk up close to the net, you might have a lot more time than you realize to line up a shot and get that perfect 3-pointer. Even if they're about to respawn, if you're playing a tanky brawler, they might just straight up lack the damage to take you out anyways. Keep in mind that all brawlers only spawn with a third of their ammo bar, and there's only 2 enemies in these game modes, not the usual 3. But just like in Brawl Ball, if they are close to their super or have a gadget that can knock the ball out of your hands, you might be on a tighter time window. Just be on the lookout for opportunities to take your time and get the perfect goal, because they're a lot more common in these 2v2 modes. So then, who are the best brawlers in this game mode? Well, as previously mentioned, the meta is mobility brawlers, so tank and assassins are really good. Frank has a lot of HP, and a stun, and a pull gadget, and a knockback immunity gadget, plus he has a lot of damage and range, so he's basically Superman. He's always going to be good everywhere, especially here. You also have your usual picks like Saber Buzz and Wing Buzz, with their gadget to dash and supers to fly. Normal Buzz himself is also really solid. The Crocodile one, he has a stun to steal the ball and a gadget that can get him a free super shot, and it's also just a good mobility tool to move across the map. Melody, Daryl, and Stu are also really good here just because they have multiple supers, or in Stu's case he just gets a super really fast, letting them all go for more super shots, and it helps that the map is pretty small too, so they can charge their supers and zip around more easily. Other tanks that are really solid are Primo, BB, and Jackie, who don't usually move that fast but have a knockback ability of some kind, which helps a lot to take the ball out of an enemy's hands to prevent goals and steal goals. Mortis can also work, especially with that hypercharge and teammate potential, and he can juggle the ball around pretty fast, but I think with one less enemy to chain bats on, and him generally struggling against other tanks and assassins, he's more difficult to make work than in the 3v3s. And finally, Max also gets an honorable mention here just because she's Max, and although she's kind of harder to play, her super is literally movement speed, so she's always worth thinking about, plus she does decent damage. And now for the best tank counters to counter all of these disgusting tanks and assassins. Lou, I think, is absolutely filthy right now. Definitely pick that goofy ice cream brawler up if you want to make the entire enemy team have significantly less fun. Gale is also really good in Basketball because his tornado gadget can blow the balls out of an enemy's hands, and he also has a super which will do the same exact thing, plus a slow on his attack as well, or the stun on his super if you're feeling particularly zesty today. Colette is another great pick because with 2 shots and a super she'll kill every brawler in the game since nobody uses shield gear here, plus with the push it star power she can knock the ball out of an enemy's hands too, and her healing gadget gives her a lot of sustain against tanks. Griff is also really strong right now, he just farts out so much goddamn damage with that super. Make sure you can land your shots though, and think about using those gadgets to open up the map depending on your teammate's brawler and the enemy team's comp. Maisie is similar to Griff, hard to land her shots, but if you do, she can shred people some new holes. Her dash gadget also has a stun in it, so you can use it to steal the ball from people as well. RT himself is pretty tanky, and if you can land your shots, he absolutely demolishes tanks and assassins. Plus he has that gadget which gives him a free super shot too, and also turns him into a super tank counter, just one-shotting people. And finally, Surge is Surge and will always be a pretty decent tank counter, as usual. You can also pick him here. When picking your team comp, you can either go a tank or assassin with a tank counter, or 2 tank assassins, or 2 tank counters. It's really up to you and your vibe. I generally prefer one of each though, just to play it safe and have a little bit more utility and flexibility, but if you have no friends and lie to yourself that you're just that lone wolf type, you'll be playing with randoms anyway, so it's not like you really have a choice. Play what you want. And that's the basket brawl. Hopefully you've learned something and feel ready to bounce your balls all up in your enemy's net. Let's now move on to one of our first new game modes, Special Delivery. This game mode is pretty similar to Payload, where you push a cart and first team to bring it all the way wins the game. But this time there's only one cart, which makes it a lot more hot zone like, and already you should be thinking about going tanks and tank counters here yet again, because that is the meta in hot zone. In terms of game mode mechanics, unlike in hot zone, if 2 people stand on the pad it actually goes faster, so that's something to keep in mind. If both teams are standing on the pad, the cart will move for whichever team has more members on the pad, and if that number is tied, it'll stand still. If the game timer runs out, the game doesn't just end, but it goes to overtime where the cart moves faster, and again, the first team to push it all the way will win. If overtime runs out, the win is given to the team that has currently pushed the furthest, not the team that has pushed it the furthest before. So at first, I wasn't sure why they even had this marker that shows how far you've pushed the cart if it doesn't determine who wins after overtime, but then after rewatching some footage, I realized it's because re-pushing the cart to where you've previously pushed it to is actually faster than pushing it there for the first time. So you get a little speed boost when pushing the cart back to where it used to be, and that's what the marker is for. It doesn't affect the outcome of the game besides that. For some general game sense tips in this mode, since the payload is shared for both teams, during teamfights it's kind of a winner-takes-all scenario where whoever is left alive at the end gets to capitalize on the respawn timers and push the cart for their team's side, so it's really important that you don't die in this game mode. Even if a teammate dies, if just one player stays alive, they can kind of stall the cart progress a little and prevent the enemy team from pushing nearly as far, and that can make a big difference. But that being said, a 2v1 is still so advantageous for the side with the player up. If you're down a player, you're gonna have to play pretty passively and give up a lot of cart progress anyways, so try not to die early into a fight and leave your teammate to get TP'd. Going for pinches is going to be really important in these 2v2 game modes to turn the fight into a 2v1. Try to focus one target with your teammate if you can, because if you can get that kill, that's usually enough to just win the team fight outright in a lot of cases using your player advantage. The winner takes all scenario in team fights is also especially true near the end of the game in overtime, because the cart moves so damn fast, it takes just 1 or 2 bad team fights to lose the game outright. So again, be really careful and try not to die, or at the very least try to trade your life out for a kill if you have to. Besides that though, the game mode is pretty simple. The best brawlers for Special Delivery, again, are tanks and tank counters, but it also kind of depends on the map, because this map that's coming up next is pretty open, which lets a lot of longer range brawlers do better here. But since this game mode is still hot zone like, tanks are always going to be good, and certain tank counters are also always going to be good too to zone out the map and help counter the tanks. For the best tanks, Frank again makes it on this list, that disgusting gorilla. Nerf after nerf and he's still this overtuned. It's insane. He has pretty decent range too, so you can even make him work on some open maps, especially if you go with support to synergize, but it's not even necessary because in a 2v2 game mode where there's one less enemy player to spit out damage and help pinch the Frank, he feels a lot more unkillable than usual. Frank is crazy. I've beaten Colette's with this brawler sometimes, and he also happens to beat the next brawler on this list, which is another usual offender, Buzz Lightyear, especially the Saber form. He has that super which blitzes him across the map faster than the fat kids on Pizza Day, and the knockback on his super combined with his damage and health can easily team wipe 2 people with a few button presses. This brawler is hella goofy and very strong, a solid choice if you want to win games. Ashe is another tank that's really good right now with its hypercharge. I've made a video about it, but basically he's cracked if you're good. Unfortunately, he doesn't do the best into Frank, but he can still occasionally pull out those wins against Frank if he plays it right. Ashe is really good, an option worth considering, especially into any single shot brawlers because of his super. Draco is another brawler that's pretty solid right now, but benefits a lot from having only 2 people shooting at him and not the usual 3. He has decent range too in his dragon form, so with his super damage reduction and healing from his star power, he's gonna be a pretty sneaky pick even on the most open maps. And for a couple honorable mentions on this map right now in particular, I've seen people run Poco and Meg as well here. Poco just because he can cycle his super pretty fast on open maps, making him really hard to kill, and Meg because she's also hard to kill and does a lot of damage. On other maps for this game mode they might not do as well, but this map in particular is pretty open, so there's solid picks here too. Now, while these are the best brawlers for this game mode, honestly a lot of different tanks and some assassins will potentially also work here. It's just that a lot of tanks and assassins happen to suffer from the same debilitating loses to Frank syndrome, where they just lose to Frank. So if you're a BB or a Kenji main and I didn't mention your favorite brawler, too bad so sad. I'm sure you can pick it if you really want to, just pray that you don't encounter a good Frank. And while the loses to Frank syndrome is debilitating, there's another even more deadly syndrome that brawlers will need to worry about here, and that's the loses to Lu syndrome. Let's talk about the tank counters. Lu beats all the tanks, all of them, including your mother. He turns them all into slush and licks them, sensually, all over, using his gadget and damage reduction star power. On open maps, he's probably the best tank counter you could ask for, and this game mode is even like Hot Zone, so you can just cover the entire cart with a super and make your opponents want to smash their phone. When playing Lu, try to lead your super in the direction the cart is heading to make them sit in that dandruff circle for longer and squeeze out those few extra tears. Lu is a slimy brawler, definitely pick him. Next up we have Clancy, who's been nerfed a ton in his level 1 and 2 forms, but he's still really good at level 3, and with the way the game mode works, comebacks are pretty much a dime a dozen, so as long as the enemy team doesn't just push their payload to completion all the way inside of your base, you can always come back later in overtime, and Clancy does great in situations where games go on for a long time. I've also found that his dash gadget feels really nice because it gives you an ammo and Clancy's reload speed is pretty slow. Try the dash Clancy here, it's really not bad. Colette is also good as usual into tanks. I think they finally fixed the bug where her super gets interrupted by the cart sometimes. 2-tap push at star power, kills everyone, you get the drill. There might not be as many tanks being played though as you'd expect on a more open map like this, so this one might be a riskier pick, I don't know, it kinda depends, but Colette is still really good regardless. A much safer pick though, that's not really a tank counter, but he is really good on these open maps, especially on this map, it's Laser Buzz Lightyear. Not much to say, his fire is super annoying, and he has a lot of damage at long range. Pretty solid pick, everyone has him. Charlie is actually also low-key solid in this game mode, especially in a 2v2 setting, because being able to turn the fight into a 2v1 is just that strong, and her super does that for free. Well, you have to land it, but if you can land a super on someone and take them out of the fight, it's just crazy good here. The only caveat is that cocooned enemies will count as players on the payload, which might slow down your push, but that also means a cocoon Charlie will count as well with that gadget, and this can help stall out the payload in some scenarios. Give the Charlie a try, she recently got a buff too, and a lot of people were able to get her skin for free using that pizza bug. Nita also is not bad in this game mode, she can do pretty well against some brawlers that don't have piercing abilities. And at the risk of repeating myself too much from the basketball section, I'll just say Griff, Maisie, Surge are also solid options. Go with your heart, I believe in you. As a side note, I also do see Ems, Jessie, and 8-Bit used a lot in this map in particular. They all do pretty good into tanks and have decent range, but they might not do the best into certain tanks and Lu, so keep that in mind. When picking your comp, I think the only comp that might be difficult or annoying to play is a comp with 2 tank counters and no tanks, because it'll make it hard to finish out the payload when you get near the enemy's base, since you won't have as much staying power that a bulky aggro brawler might. So generally, I think it's best if you have at least one brawler that's kinda tanky in my opinion. And that's Special Delivery, which brings us then to the star of the show, our next game mode, Brawl Hockey, affectionately termed Brocky for this video. This game mode is complete dogshit for beginners, because it has a really steep learning curve, and if you don't know what's going on, you're gonna hate it. For starters, this game mode is not Brawl Ball. In Brawl Ball, the ball travels very little distance. The puck can travel across the entire map, or most of the map, even if you don't have your super. Super shots are more just for that extra speed, if nothing else. And this means that puck control is really important since scoring can happen from anywhere. And map awareness is also extremely important because depending on the map, there's going to be tons of different scoring angles and locations where you can kick the puck and get a goal. The best way to understand this game mode is to look at the map and visualize the different scoring angles. Let's use this map that's currently in rotation as an example. All the red lines here are scoring angles, but this is actually not comprehensive because there are some other trickshot Instagram reel highlight angles you can do by bouncing the puck off some walls, but these are the main ones you should look out for. To see these easier, I'll separate these out by the sides of the map. Let's start off with the left side of the map. In my opinion, this left side isn't as good for scoring, just because if you look at the way these scoring angles all kind of converge in one spot here, most of these are kind of redundant, where if an enemy just stands right here, they can block a lot of these scoring angles, so it's a little easier to defend. Especially this angle right here, combined with this angle right here, right? They just all converge on one spot, so if someone is standing like right here, they can just kind of defend that. There is a potential mix-up spot here where if you're standing here and you're going for a goal, you might be able to shoot it off of this wall and get it in, but that's a pretty tight angle and not that many people I think can even see. Like it's very easy to just do it a little bit off and miss like that, so it's a little hard to do, but if you can pull it off, that's not a bad idea if there's only one player alive on the enemy team. If we take a look at this right side now, this right side I think is actually a little bit better as a scoring spot just because I think this angle of attack for scoring and this one are just really, really strong. There's only one person alive on the enemy team, right? The only way they can defend it is if they're playing a brawler with a lot of mobility and they're standing right here, and they have to be able to dash to get the ball to intercept it. If they can't do that, then you can actually, if someone is standing here, you can usually just pick one side and score, which is really nice. You might have to walk up a little bit first to get a better shot to do it a little faster, but it's still very doable. And yeah, I've gotten a lot of goals just bouncing it off of this wall, but I think the very best spot to score from is actually standing more towards the middle here, because from here you have access to this shot, you also have access to this shot. And if you move a little bit over to the left, you can also get this shot too, which if people are like standing over here to try to defend the shot from here, then they'll not be able to defend this one, right? There's a lot of games where you'll probably have someone run up the map to grab the puck in the middle and just kick it in like this and get the goal on you. It's super cheap, it is super cringe, and it's also super funny to do to someone, so be on the lookout for that. When you're defending, right, just flip all of these around so the scoring lines look something like this. You want to try to keep an eye out for these scoring lines in particular. You're going to see a lot of those. Also, this wall bounce here, that's a pretty big scoring line that you're going to see a lot of. And also this one here, occasionally you'll see too. So yeah, these are the main scary scoring lines that you'll want to watch out for. And the best way to defend these is basically to stand kind of somewhere around here by the goal. Try to have a teammate covering each half of the goal, because it's really hard to cover both sides of the goal with just one person, especially against two people who can pass the puck between each other and kind of utilize all of these different scoring lines. And if you have the puck, the best way to score is usually to try and get a kill on the enemy to clear up the path and score the puck. Or if they're not standing in the way of those scoring angles, like if they don't know about the angle or are out of position, just go for the goal. The best way though to learn these scoring angles isn't to stare at a diagram like this, but it's to learn from experience. Don't bother memorizing the map and just run a few games. You might lose a bunch of times to some random bullshit scoring angle that you didn't see, and that's going to start to create a mental map of the scoring angles for the next time, and eventually you'll learn the map and the game mode, and once you do, it's pretty fun, because Brawl Hockey is really fast paced. Especially in a 2v2 where there are less bodies to block all the scoring angles, games can go by really fast where people just score goal after goal, and unlike in Brawl Ball, the puck doesn't really stand still, so once you've picked it up, you're pretty much forced to go for a pass or a shot in order to participate in the game again. On some maps, you might be able to kick it to the corner of the enemy's side and make it bounce all up in there, which might work out and give your team some map control, but it depends a lot on the map, and what you don't want is kicking the puck into the enemy's hands, because then they'll be able to get a scoring opportunity out of it. So the best bet when you have the puck in your hands is to try to go for a goal or a pass to your teammate and then have them go for a goal. And to achieve this, try to space out in this mode so you and your teammate are covering as many of the enemy scoring angles as possible while opening up more scoring opportunities for your team. Dying is also really bad in this game mode, like in Special Delivery. If a player dies, it becomes way harder to stop a goal unless you can get lucky with respawns or if the enemy team is bad. And just as a quick PSA, this is kind of like when doctors say diet and exercise is important. Like, everyone's heard this advice before, and chances are you're not going to start following it if just because someone tells you to if you weren't already following it before. But I'll repeat this advice anyways for Brawl Hockey specifically. Never go with a random here. Please do not go with a random here. Especially in a 2v2 where your teammate is half of your team's strength, and especially in a game mode like Brawl Hockey with the learning curve as steep as it is. If someone doesn't understand this game mode, or if it's their first time playing, they will 100% be a liability. This isn't like other game modes where just generally staying alive and getting a couple kills is enough to kind of play decent. You need to know a lot of the proper angles to shoot the puck to score, and also know those same angles for the enemy team in order to be at the right place at the right time to intercept shots and successfully make shots. On top of that, team synergy is really important, so if you go with a random and give up control over your team comp, then you're basically on your hands and knees begging for like a Tick or a Jesse teammate to throw your game. Take any bad experience you've had with a random not having the game awareness to play well in your normal games, and Brawl Hockey is exponentially worse than that. Do not play with randoms in this contest if you care about winning, or even having fun, because losing is just not that fun. Get a teammate. There's an invite link to my Discord in the description if you want to look for a teammate there, or you can go outside, I guess, and make friends or something. Now, for a couple common mistakes I've seen players do in this game mode, again, this isn't Brawl Ball. Even if you get scored on twice, it's still winnable. I've seen people go AFK after getting scored on twice, thinking the game is GG. In Brawl Hockey, the games go for 3 goals, so keep playing. You can get 2 back-to-back goals in like 15 seconds, okay? Don't lose hope. Every game is winnable. Also, as different as this game mode is from Brawl Ball, this game mode is kind of like Brawl Ball in one way, and that's that you can actually walk in the puck in a lot of scenarios, right? Don't be afraid to just walk in the puck, especially if you're on a high HP brawler. I think people get too used to just kicking the puck and sending it across the map. They get in like a habit of doing it even when they're right up in front of the goal, and they don't need to. Most people aren't playing the highest DPS brawlers in this game mode, and unless the enemy is rocking a stun, you might just be able to walk it in. Don't forget about that as an option. And so then, what are the best brawlers in Brawl Hockey? When picking a brawler for Brawl Hockey, the most important thing is movement. This game mode is all about intercepting scoring angles or getting 2 different scoring angles to go for goals. If your brawler is slow, chances are it's shit and you should pick something else, unless they have the next most important thing, which are stuns, pulls, and knockbacks. These are really important to prevent enemies from blocking the puck to make goals, and also to prevent enemies from going for goals themselves by knocking the puck out of their grubby hands. Also, since tanks and assassins are generally picked a lot in this game mode, stuns and knockbacks can help deal with these brawlers to take them out, and most tank counters have these abilities in their kit. High HP is also pretty good in this game mode to help pick the puck up and keep hold of it to make a shot or walk it in, and wall breaks can also be good to create more scoring angles for your team. So given all this info, the best brawlers in Brocky are in ascending order of strength. First up we have Frank. Again, this bastard is back, but thankfully he's not the best of the best, just pretty good. He has high HP, a wall break, and a pull/stun. If you do go for a wall break, try to focus on targeting the enemy's defensive walls, since it allows for more scoring angles. Breaking the walls on your side can technically make it more convenient to defend sometimes, but usually it's a bad idea. The only reason why Frank isn't higher is just because he's a little bit slow and doesn't have any movement abilities, but he's still pretty good just because of his stun and stuff. And next up, we have regular Buzz. His stun is pretty good here, especially if you're rocking that bonus stun duration, and he has a gadget that can give him a really nice mobility tool, and again, like in Brawl Ballsack, a free super shot if needed. Mortis, Kenji, and Stu are also very good options. All 3 have a ton of mobility. Mortis and Kenji can dash with their basic attack, and Stu has that speed zone turret to give his team a boost at the start, plus his super which cycles really quickly. On Stu, I prefer to go long dash just because you really need all the mobility you can get in this game mode. And as a note, I don't think the other dashing brawlers like Melody or Daryl are nearly as good as Mortis, Stu, and Kenji, just because their supers take a little while to charge and aren't as easily accessible compared to these 3. You don't really want to be caught being unable to stop 2 goals just because you didn't charge her first super yet, but Melody does have 3 supers, so she might be flexible enough if you can charge her first super and cycle it. Next up, we have again the Wing plus Saber form Buzz Lightyears. Buzz Lightyear can dash up to score early goals with his gadget, and both Wing and Saber form have supers that give you solid mobility. Wing does generally beat Saber though and has a longer range, so it might be worth going Wing more often than Saber, but it's probably mostly personal preference. Also, in this contest, you could still go 2 Wing form Buzz Lightyears if you really wanted to, because I think they still allow multiple Buzz Lightyears in one game regardless of the form. He's pretty good, everyone has him, definitely worth trying. And now let's talk about Charlie, Cordelius, Sandy, and Kit. I said earlier that brawlers with mobility are the most important, but Frank had a stun and he made it on this list, and these brawlers are no exception. Stuns are really good, especially in a 2v2 where you can take a player out of the game temporarily. Charlie, I think, is the weakest of the 4 because she only has her normal movement speed and her super takes a while to charge, but if she lands it, she can get a lineup for a free goal or a free team fight win. Cordelius is better since he's a lot faster than Charlie and also has his mute gadget to prevent people from shooting the puck in a pinch, and his super lasts a while too and can potentially net him a kill, which is solid, but he doesn't really compare to the previously mentioned brawlers with real mobility options, so yeah. Next up we have Sandy. Sandy has that stun, and when they're stunned, they can't intercept a puck, so he's actually really good in this game mode. He also has a fast movement speed, but he doesn't do the most damage and also doesn't have any real dashing abilities too, so I don't think he's as good as this next brawler, which is Kit. I think Kit is crazy in Brocky. He has that Invis gadget, which can actually trick people into thinking there's nobody covering a scoring angle and intercept the puck, and he can also jump across the map onto people, which is really good since his super charges kind of quickly, and that gives him solid mobility. If Kit lands on someone, he'll also just take them out of the game for a few seconds, and that's all you really need sometimes to get a goal in a game mode like Brawl Hockey. Definitely try the Kit, he's hella cracked here. But the best brawler in this game mode, I think, is honestly Jackie. Jackie has a gadget that'll speed her to the ball, and she can just kick it in with the help of her super to pull enemies. She's just really good into other assassins too that don't outrange her. I think for Jackie, Hardy Hardhat star power is actually a little better in this game mode for the extra survivability, because damage isn't as important in a game mode like this. It's mostly just about stuns and CCs and movement. Jackie is really good since she charges her super so fast, and she's really good, especially against bad players who don't know all the scoring angles. You can end games in like 30 seconds with this brawler sometimes. I'll give a quick honorable mention too to Fang since he has a stun in his kit, which is really nice, but his super does take kind of a while to charge, which isn't as ideal, and it's not as flexible in terms of like dashing distance. He's still good though if you can charge a super and cycle it, but yeah. And there are a couple other brawlers too that might be able to work, like Max and Miko, but I think these brawlers we've mentioned here are your best bet in this game mode. Max and Miko are just a little bit worse than them. And that's Brawl Hockey. For the other 2v2 game modes, this video is too long, so I'm not going to cover them, but it's basically the same thing as the regular game modes, probably with just some extra 2v2 considerations. So maybe tanks are a little better, brawlers with stuns or ways to take you out of the game like Cordelius and Charlie are going to be a little better, things like that. It'll surely be a real romp. And to end off this video, because Frank is so good everywhere and you'll be seeing him a lot, I figure I'd flash this graphic that shows the Frank hypercharge dodging pattern. There is actually a way to dodge this hypercharge if you're standing towards the tips of his range, because his hypercharge isn't a proper circle. Go ahead and try that in your games in a pinch, let me know how it goes. And that's gonna be it for me. I need to get some fucking sleep, and I'm sick. I'm sniffling, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm dying. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to say I love your shirt today, it looks absolutely rad. Take care of yourselves, guys. I love you. Goodbye. Peace.